it comes under sort of hate speech laws in this country, and we thought we'd seen the back of them in the previous government in terms of pushing through legislation against hate speech, but they seem to be popping back up. And as you say, the Islamic Federation are quite keen on them because they want to bring in blasphemy laws via effectively the back door and calling it hate speech. The trouble is, hate speech is very vaguely defined, and who defines it? Well, the person who doesn't like the speech. So thankfully we've got the Free Speech Union here in New Zealand, and they are quite active pushing against this. Okay, well, thank you for all that.
So, but one thing I'd like to add just into the conversation is, listening to your interview with Simon last night, and I was listening to Simon reading out a lot of the comments, and the way I heard them is where a lot of the listeners for Simon, I call very awake. They know what's going on. They know that we're in a lot of trouble. They know that our democracy is being deliberately subverted, but the masses in general don't realise it, or they have an inkling something's wrong, but they haven't worked it out. But there's also the point made that by Andrew that an armed revolution is not in our best interest, not what we want. So and you've got this globalist influence that's driving all of this. The United Nations Agenda 2030 and so forth. And the only way I've been thinking about it to work is that, as we were saying, or you were saying in the interview last night, is trying to build a coalition of the willing, so to speak, like working as a united force, saying what can we agree upon? And there doesn't have to be a whole lot of things, but it's just like these clear principles or policies and saying, and creating a movement that a huge number of people will get behind, like the Reform UK. And we've got the numbers there. It's just about galvanizing everyone and having strong leadership and winning the day in the end.
Yeah. So there was a mention, some people think people in New Zealand are stupid. I don't think they're stupid. I think they may be ignorant in the sense that they're not aware. So they're not aware of what's going on, and they're not put the plot together, it were. They're not connecting the dots and see all these things going on, but haven't said, well, maybe there's a bigger agenda going on. And so one of our roles at Rock the Vote is to wake people up. And that's why we have these events, and that's why we have the speakers and the movies to get discussion going, because an awful lot of people are quite complacent. And what's the difference between ignorance and complacency? Well, don't know and I don't care. So the idea is that we need to shake them out of their complacency, and we can shake them out of their ignorance through education. And it's basically one or two people at a time, and we need to get more and more people into our meetings who will bring friends, and bring a normie day. Well, that might be a good idea.
Why focus on education rather than selling a vision?
I think you've kind of got to sell the problem first. You can sell a vision, but do visions sell that well? Because the next question is, what problem are you trying to fix? So the first step in it is to point out what the problem is, and the problem is the creeping authoritarianism and the power grabs, and more importantly, the land grabs that are going on, and are likely to go on. So in the forefront will be, well, what's going on with the local councils? Why are our rates going up so much? And what's going on with managed retreat? Why is parts of the coastline going? And why is so much land, shoreline and seabed being handed over to the Maoris without a great deal of consultation? Or, wouldn't it be nice to have a referendum on this? Yeah, or transparency. Yeah, so there's little tricks. We thought we'd seen the back of co-governance, but the new government have brought it in by the back door, and councils are bringing it in by the back door and calling it something else. We thought we got rid of Three Waters, but it's now been renamed as something else. So you've always got to be vigilant, and just the fact that you've got a different government in charge doesn't mean the agenda has gone away. It's almost as if these guys are just puppets, and all you're doing every election is changing the sock puppet. The hand underneath still stays the same, and the direction that we're heading in, the country's heading in, is staying the same. And this road to ruin, as it were, ruin for ordinary New Zealanders, and we will be serfs. That's where we're heading.
A question. Oh, sorry.
I think a vision really works because it's positive. And, that's what people respond to, something that they really want rather than a negative. But our difficulty so far has been that you could say 80% of the people don't think anything's wrong. Hassan, they don't see what's coming in the future, and that I think is why we have ended up coming back to pointing out the problem all the time, because this is where we feel like we've got the wall.
Mm.
People don't understand. Why do you need a vision like that? Because there's nothing wrong.
So
Yeah.
a question for Simon, perhaps. Why, comparing New Zealand, for example, to the UK, why do you think Reform UK is just taken off, and so they had an election now, Nigel Farage with the Prime Minister, but we don't really have that in New Zealand? What's the difference, do you think?
Well, I think there's probably a large number of factors. One, I think, is that the United Kingdom's problems are significantly more pressing than ours. Like, we have the sort of creeping authoritarianism, and it's things like, you read in the newspaper that suddenly the riverbeds have been handed over by the judges because they couldn't get anywhere with marine title. That's just a little thing. And while it annoys people, it's not like it's a little girl at a dance class getting her head chopped off. So I think that perhaps their issues feel a little bit more immediate than ours do. And also the other issue that you have is that New Zealanders tend to be happy-go-lucky and really rather apathetic about it all. And I do stand by my comment last night. When you get right down to it, us Kiwis are fucking stupid.
Yeah, agreed.
But also, what I've heard from Simon for a little while now is, because I consider Simon to be someone that's, what would you say, awake or aware of the issues going on, and he, he's very aware politically. It's his passion. He's a patriot, and he's watching us go down the gurgler, and so his frustration's coming out because he can see that it's not like we're just heading into quicksand just by chance or accident. It's by design. Yeah. And another thing is, which we mentioned, I think might have been on your show last night on Saturday, Rock the Vote hosted the movie The Agenda, and there was a guy there. There's a friend of mine who's he's not quite a normie, but he's definitely got one foot in the normie camp. He's not. Anyway, I messaged him last night, saying, like, thanks for coming along. How'd you find it? And he's sent me an email back today, lengthy, saying, that, it was deeply disturbing for him watching that movie. And then he gets a message today from 2 Degrees saying that by Christmas, he's got to upgrade to a 5G phone. And he said, I could just so see if it's all about, it's not like God's coming down and saying, have this wonderful new IT. It's about the surveillance and tracking wherever we go. This is how he's writing it to me. And he said it even became apparent in that movie, the severity of this totalitarianism that we're facing is that it'll be even very difficult to survive going off grid in the coming years. To going off grid, it's not going to be so possible, sort of thing. That's what we're up against. It's enormous. And
somebody mentioned that on Saturday. You could just go off grid and hide away, and be self-sufficient, and that used to be the case. But you can't go off grid if there's no land. If they come along and say, well, that's not your land anymore, and we're going to take it away for whatever reason. They could take it away as a site of special interest, or we can take it away as because the Maori rights on it, or we can take it away because managed retreat because of climate change. We're all going to this area is likely to be flooded, so therefore we'll take it off you. So this is one of the fundamental things about civilization, was the protection of property rights. And if you throw that out of the window so easily, and that your property rights are not sacrosanct, they're not sacred, they're not guaranteed through the law, then your civilization is going to fall apart. It's going to be a land grab. And as I said last night, it's going to be the one with the biggest guns, or the most with the most guns is going to win. You're going to descend into tribal warfare. One of the reasons why Reform are doing so well in Britain is perhaps because Britain is in such a mess. The Islamist takeover is quite shocking and has been ongoing for decades. But we've now got Islamist MPs in Westminster and calling for, say, blasphemy laws and trying to make the crime of Islamophobia a criminal offence under law. So and Britain has bent over backwards to accommodate many nations and many cultures, and most cultures have fitted in, because the topic of my next Deep Thinkers meetup is about multiculturalism. Has multiculturalism failed? Well, if you look in Britain, actually, in some ways it's been a great success, because there's a great deal of cultural integration, the great deal of what we might call the melting pot. There's just one culture that sticks out, and rather than integrating with British culture and adding to it, it wants to bring basically a third world culture into Britain and turn Britain into the third world. That's what you're seeing now. That's why the people of Britain have just had enough. And that's why they're turning to Reform, because they've been let down by all the mainstream parties. The Conservative Party is not conservative, and it's carrying out the policies basically that Tony Blair implemented many years ago. So just like we've got in New Zealand, that you've got Labour and National, what's the difference? You just get, there they are last night, dancing away on the same dance floor with the same girls.
So does this mean that our people in New Zealand aren't really going to listen until it gets really, really bad? We might be sort of forming up tiny groups all over the place, but actually, people really don't respond until it starts hitting them in the pocket or in their sense of safety. Until then, are we doomed to just be doing this initial gathering up? We tried. Tanya Unkovich, tried to get into New Zealand first, didn't she? And obviously gave it away for whatever reason it was. It was looking too hard to, if we're going to try and put people into Parliament just like the Islamic people are, well, how do you do that?
Well, yesterday, Catherine and I attended the Democracy Action's AGM, and present was Professor Elizabeth Rata, Elliot Ekalai, Janet Dixon, the real estate agent. And, Elliot gave this fantastic presentation, and he was sort of saying, as far as he's concerned, the three main groups that have been making, he feels, very good impacts. I don't know how he's measured this, but Hobson's Pledge, which he's a part of, so he might feel like he has to say that. The New Zealand Centre for Political Research, Muriel Newman, and Democracy Action. And he was saying that Democracy Action's actually been making a bigger impact than they possibly realise. And he was talking about these other groups, like the Free Speech Union. I said, why don't we get all these people into a room together? Why don't we, get talking? Because I'm sure all of us, creating this united front I'm talking about, get in the room. We probably all like each other. Like, I've met Elizabeth Rata a year ago. She could remember me. We had a really nice chat. Janet Dixon was fantastic. Elliot Ekalai's, on our Rock the Vote Telegram, he's done. And I think we just get everyone together who've got the right intention. I'm not talking about the ACT Party or the New Zealand First, this is because they are already existing parties that people are feeling betrayed from, and particularly National, but getting these grassroots movements together to say, what can we all agree on? Let's do it.
Mm. Mm.
Yes, collaboration is important.
Okay.
We cannot agree on everything because we are different,
Mm.
but there are core ideas that we can agree on, and that's enough. That's enough.
Well, but you know, we've done this. You know, is why did that not work? You know, why is it that when we've drawn these groups together, there's been just a sense of we can't do anything else except admit that yes, we're mates, and that when it gets bad enough, then you know maybe we'll be able to collaborate even more. But until then, it just seems like there isn't enough that we can achieve.
Well, what I'm thinking is something Andrew said on Simon's TV last night show, that you know, in the freedom movement, so many people are so individualistic and a lot of egos go in there and personalities, whereas the way I see it, Democracy Action, Hobson's Pledge, and free, a lot more professional. You know, they're still grassroots, but they're more organised and they've got structure there. Whereas in the freedom movement in general, even though they're calling for unity, it feels a little bit all over the show and not this cohesion there. And there's people have been attacking each other, and that just doesn't work. You know, when we've all got a common enemy, if you will, and it's not each other. You know,
I think it was also traumatizing for a while, especially, and is now as we observe where it's going, and now that we understand more and more of it, you know, we've got a, you know, we all put the T-shirt on because that was like, here's my family. My family can kind of get round me and make me feel better after this trauma, and that's what we have to let go of that so that we can be in a bigger group again. You know, we've needed too much to hold on to the elements of protection that we all sort of sought immediately.
Because I think everyone in this small group here would agree that if we don't get it together, like for example, just say you cannot rule this out in 2026, the results from the national election come through and Labour win the day with Te Pāti, Māori Party and the Greens, it's all over. No, it is literally all over. Yeah, like after 3 years of them, it's going to be too late.
Would the problem be immaturity of people? People are immature
in the freedom movement, I think.
Well, we think so.
Yeah,
but they wouldn't say so.
I think part of it is egos, that you know people feel they should do something and feel they'll strike out on their own, so they form a party and create a party around them, and they have their own very unique ideas rather than seeking out kindred spirits, as it were, who have similar views. Now, there are a number of organisations which I would put down as part of the freedom movement. Hobson's Pledge is one of them, but they're not a political party. They're a political activist group or political movement, and they're not standing candidates, are they? They're just trying to raise awareness and political campaigns against this Maorification of New Zealand, this giving away via co-governance. So that's one aspect. You've got a great movement in the Free Speech Union, but again, they're not political. They're not a party. They're just a group. Effectively, they are political, but not party political, and they're not standing candidates. And so, what about Democracy Action? I thought their intention was not to become a party.
Yeah.
No.
So what do they hope to achieve, and how do they want to achieve it? And how did they get Prof. Ratta there and Elliot there and so on?
How do they get them to the meeting, did you say?
Yeah.
Well, Democracy Action's been around since about 2011. I think they've just built these relationships with these people, gone out there, and and it's just happened from there, sort of thing.
And they are searching out all the time elements of democracy missing from all over New Zealand in various ways that it's being debunked and what have you, and they are pushing back, making submissions, speaking up, doing those small one-person kind of things that that seem clear in each of those small stories. So, they were talking about various different things that they were working on right now. So, it's the same idea. It's just small steps, very small steps.
On a related note, have you heard of City Watch NZ?
Yeah, I have heard of them. Yeah, I have.
Right, they've been in touch today.
Oh, great.
Via Substack. So I'm guessing it partly a result of last night's transmission. But they seem to have similar concerns. But again, like Council Watch and so on, they're more of a, shall we say, a watchdog, a political activist group, rather than an out-and-out political party, and they do serve their purpose, and they are very useful in running campaigns, and so we certainly need to keep an eye on them and get involved with them
and meet them.
Yeah.
It feels like so many of us are just ordinary people. We're not used to the idea of putting ourselves forward for Parliament. We're just normal people who can see a problem down the line. It's not easy to know what to do.
Yeah, I remember after it was shortly after the election in 2023, we said, in a year's time we'll have this conference with all the freedom movement people and do a debrief, and where do we go from here? That never happened. The nearest thing we've had is the Freedoms NZ, or Freedoms Alliance NZ, group chats and our meetings with that. And I was hoping it'd be much bigger, including the likes of Matt King. I mean, does he want to get involved? Is he going to disappear from politics altogether? Because he seems to be quite active on Facebook.
Well, the thing was, what happened, as you know, not all of these parties folded after the election. They deregistered, including Matt's party, Democracy NZ, I think it was.
Yeah.
And the disappointment at that time was enormous, and as we know, there was just so much work to do to try and get ourselves up on our feet, and a whole lot of work meant that when that amount of failure happened, we all just went, oh my gosh, it was too much, and we collapsed, and broke apart. You think of Loyal, broke into three.
Because the great, I believe I know why, but for a lot of people, the great mystery is with the National Party, why don't they just kill off the Te Mari Party and support ACT's Treaty Principles Bill, and which is what they were voted in for, to stop this governance stuff. So Simon, with your contacts, have you heard there must be lots of National Party supporters that are disappointed in Luxon on that front?
Yeah, there's a huge amount of disappointment about that, within the party hierarchy, as well as amongst the sort of the general membership base, and this is the end result for all of the nominally centre-right parties in Europe. It doesn't matter if it's the Conservatives in Great Britain, or it's the Liberal National Coalition in Australia, if it's the National Party in New Zealand, if it's the Republican Party in France. All of them have lost out to smaller right-wing parties that are more inclined to be representing what people actually think. And we saw this with the rise of Rassemblement National, with Reform in the United Kingdom, and with the potential split of the Liberals and the Nationals in Australia. And this is the latitude that the smaller parties that acts in New Zealand first. It gives them a position to act upon. Don't forget, it was only like, what was it? Just 2016, 2017. ACT had 1 seat in Parliament. They had 0.7% of the vote in the polls. And their only seat in Parliament was because of a shabby deal in Epsom where National didn't stand a candidate.
Yes.
So, they do get latitude from those sorts of things. But what we're seeing across the board is the sort of the rise of the uni party, where it doesn't really matter if it's Ardern or it's Luxon. It is the same ideology. They're both going and meeting Larry Fink in New York to receive their instructions. They're both clapping when Zelensky does a couple of lines of coke and bombs a bridge in Donetsk. They're both listening to Ursula von der Leyen when she talks about one world government. So, I think that there is the way things have tended to work in the West, particularly in the Anglosphere, since the end of World War II, is that 75% of the time you have a centre-right government, between 2/3 to 75% of the time, but they oscillate between them and the largest of the left-wing parties. So in France, that was the Republicans and the Socialists, about 75%, 25%. In Great Britain and New Zealand, similarly, about 75%, 25% between Conservatives, Labour and National Labour. But those days are changing, particularly in countries where they don't have first past the post. The good thing is it means that there is latitude for some of the smaller parties to do better at the expense of those traditional parties.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Grant says we're not really selling anything, just trying to educate people. I disagree. I think we are selling something. We are selling ourselves, and we are selling Rock the Vote, and we're selling our vision and our politics. And eventually we'll be selling our candidates, putting our candidates up for election. And that involves selling. So it's not just about educating people. The primary, yes, in the first stage, and one of our biggest jobs at the moment is to educate people, spread the message or messages, to counter the narrative.
Do you have any comments, Damon?
I think what we're doing at Rock the Vote, I think it's working. I think we've got to get Andrew in front of people.
Yeah.
And in terms of the whole, should we go and politically campaign or should we just raise up arms? You have to really exhaust every legal avenue first. That includes the elections. That includes playing the game. We've got to play the game here. Yeah.
Would it be possible to get in touch with all these small groups and try to create the emergency, make them understand that if we don't get together now, 1 year out from the big appointment, we are lost. Like 12 months are not enough. Already 12 months are not enough. Now, each day that passes without getting together and discussing the core ideas that we can agree on, every day that passes that doesn't happen is a win for National or Labour. I think we have to create the emergency, the feeling of emergency.
But how do we do that? I mean, the national government. Sorry.
One idea maybe is trying to make them understand that 2 years have now gone by and nothing changed in the freedom movement. Now we are left with 1 year. 2 years have gone by. If these forces don't get together, we will see Labour next time. That's it.
Yeah, the problem for
that's
New
the big
Zealand
challenge.
Or can we remain in our little network spots? Remain small but network big. And make sure we all vote the same. Even though it may be not necessarily something that we have built, but hopefully it is.
Yeah, I mentioned it before. I think Rock the Vote should be the hub. It should also be the home for the dispossessed, as it were, those who are disenfranchised with the existing parties, those who were in one of the smaller groups and that group has now disappeared. It's the home for the politically homeless, that they can see that mainstream politics isn't working for them, and bring them in. But you're quite right. They won't really take action until it smacks them in the face, until their house gets repossessed, probably. Or something like that. Or they're forced by their professional body to take a compulsory Maori course, something like that, because that's yet another angle as well. And almost all these groups have got their own special interests that so we probably agree with Hobson's pledge, and that would be part of their policies, would be part of our policies. So in a sense, we could use Hobson's pledge as our campaigning arm and our spokesperson for that particular topic, and similarly let Kids Be Kids could be our branch for that, the educational front as well. Oh, by the way, Hassan, have you got kids in school at all?
Yeah, I do.
Right, is it a state school?
Yeah.
Right. Have you had a look at the curriculum?
Yes, and I had a fight with the school last year.
Right. Oh, tell us more.
Yeah, they introduced the pronouns and the something else. And so the pronouns policy. So a child can decide tomorrow that he is a she, not a he.
Right.
So I did my submission. I talked to parents. I distributed the leaflets at school. Some parents were interested and they were afraid of that. But in the end, I was the only one sitting down with the school board and with the principal.
Right.
And I was just one parent.
Yeah.
What can I do? Yeah.
But you are one of many. This is the trouble. There's a lot of parents who are not happy with what's going on in schools, particularly the sexualization of children and the perversion of the curriculum, the RSE curriculum in New Zealand schools. But they feel helpless. They feel that they're the only one, obviously, because everyone else is going along with it. You've got all the rainbows in the schools and the balloons and unicorns, so why not go along with it? You're being the bigot by not going along with it. And it's no wonder your child is confused. Is this actually improving a child's education? And at the same time, have you not noticed how the New Zealand education is slipping down in the ranks? It used to be highly regarded internationally, and now it's kind of an also-ran, I'm afraid. So that's another one of those issues that people won't notice until it smacks them in the face, until they've got a child or a grandchild in school and they come home deciding that their daughter now wants to be a boy.
And as a parent, you're not allowed to have a say in it.
Yeah.
But I think it comes back to also what Simon said earlier, that we're I won't use the swear word, but stupid, because we're actually, I think, traditionally quite trusting and tolerant as a nation. And for most people, they would never, our understanding of what's going on, for most people, they'd never think that the government is deliberately trying to deceive them and destroy the minds of the children through gender ideology and so forth. And they're being brainwashed. It's all about being inclusive and so forth. And it sounds all really good, but they don't understand what I personally consider as the evil behind it. That's actually trying. The worst thing you can do to a child is to sexualize them. As I read somewhere, a child does not think about sex or sexuality unless they've been groomed to do so by an adult. And that's how serious it is. This is and it's happening under national. You've got Inside Out and the Rainbow Youth, these perverted organizations. Because let's be honest, the LGBT stuff is not the norm. The norm is heterosexuality and procreation and so forth. And they're trying to confuse children, come home and don't even know who they are anymore. And the next thing is the natural progression to transgenderism, because they could be a boy or a girl or what have you. Next thing, they're taking puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones. If the general population, if we weren't so stupid as Simon said in general, people would be marching up the streets if they're just not joining the dots.
Except that we do have these groups, these leaders actually going around New Zealand and, little meeting by little meeting, trying to get the story across, like Penny from Let Kids Be Kids. Really at the moment, that is the method that we're trying to use, isn't it? And even waking parents up in that Let Kids Be Kids situation to the fact that the system is encouraging the children never to go to the parents or the grandparents when they have a problem with any of this. They're not on the list over and over again through the curriculum. They're not on the list for as ideal people to go to talk about it. And that on its own is a terrible, terrible thing, that to be pointing at parents, that they are actually the fuddy-duddies and the enemy of the child, even though, sure, there will be the odd parent here and there that is definitely going to be the center of the problem. But mostly the people that love those children the most are the parents. And so, this method that we're using right now of traveling around New Zealand and doing little talks, I mean, really, we have to support people who are doing that. That's our method right now, to point it out to parents that actually there's a problem here, even though you say, oh no, sex education's good. I remember when I was a child, I had it. It was good. They don't realize it's something different now.
Maybe one thing or one idea that by which we can rally people and groups is maybe go with them by topic. Like, what do you think about LGBTQ, or especially the transgendered ideology? Do you agree with it or no? If no, so you are with us. At least on this topic. We might not agree on other topics, but at least on this. And we contact the other group and another group and another group. And now we have many groups agreeing on a topic. And then maybe the second topic, say climate change. Again, go through these groups and say, do you agree or not with their narrative? If not, we have already two topics on which we agree. We might not agree on others. You say who you are, we say who we are. That's fine. But let's create a list of traits or characteristics of our imaginary political party that supports these ideas, these two ideas, for example. And now from there, once we have agreed on a set of ideas that are very important, like free speech, one of them. Now, once we have done that, let's see how we can get that into parliament in the next election. How can we have people in parliament that support these ideas?
I think, Hassan, I think that we already know that we agree with each other with our, the pillar subjects. It's pretty straightforward, I think, when we look at what we all think. I think that we are in very much agreement, but what we're not in agreement with is who is leading that group. You know, who is, you know, and also the flavor. You know, the you could say no one wants to change their name. You know, it's no one wants to change their T-shirt, and
to be honest, I'm quite happy to change a sheet T-shirt for a different T-shirt if it makes a bit more sense.
Well, yeah. What we found on Saturday was that there were a number of people that actually had come from other groups. You know, it's you know, maybe just keeping going with what we're doing, we are going to sort of spread, invite people in. I mean, that's what we're always trying to do. We welcome them and we say, look, glad you're here, you're with us, you're our cousins, and we're all on the same page. Maybe that would just grow. Just seems like it's slow motion.
I'm afraid of this being people being the ego of people, because that's what will destruct any movements. You might be surprised, but I'm also with the Auckland Socialist Party or group. And what I learned there is that, in fact, the left, the socialists working for the how do we call that, for the working class. Yeah, that's the main topic of all these ideas have been since the 60s and 70s. And I ask myself, why didn't that take off? Well, one of the elements is egoism. People are egoists. Everyone wants to be the leader. If this happens here too, I believe that's in 40 years, we will be at the same spot.
Yeah.
Well, it's like on Saturday at our movie, I thought, because Andrew was leading from the front, he was talking to the audience and he was saying, you know, he's the party leader, but he was making it very clear to the audience to get engagement. This is your party. This is your party. He's making it so clear to them, like he's leading, doesn't have to be forever. He's going to do his bit, but get involved, you know. And I just thought that was brilliant to really make that clear to the audience. We want to be as ego. It's about the goal and the mission, not about personal glorification at all. Otherwise, you're doing it for the wrong reason. You're just going to be, you know, like another Liz Gunn.
Yeah, that's my policy. This is an honorary role, and I expect to be replaced next year. And kind of my goal is to train my successor, as it were. And Rock the Vote is definitely not going to be a party full of egos. Otherwise, it's just going to fall apart. And again, it's not just my party. And so if I disappear, the party carries on. That's the important thing about it. It's a movement beyond personalities, as it were, even though the party may take on a personality of its own. But it's strong enough and it's confident in itself, confident enough to allow other people a spotlight. And as I say, Rock the Vote should be a focal group. It should be the focus of a lot of people in the freedom movement. And it should be providing a platform for the people like Let Kids Be Kids, like why not the Taxpayers Union, why not the Free Speech Union, and so on. So because these will all feed into us, they will all be giving us ideas. So there will be fellow travelers along this road, and that I can't do it on my own. I've said this before, I can't do it on my own. I certainly need help, and I'll be looking for help from as many people as possible. So I'm not going to be delivering thousands and thousands of leaflets through doors. I can't do that on my own. I need I need an army basically who can deliver these leaflets and put up the posters and spread the word. So
Yeah.
I think one of the successes of any party will be word of mouth. We don't have the money for massive TV or radio or even newspaper campaigns. We've just got to do it mainly through word of mouth, possibly through social media as much as we can. But if somebody comes along and gets inspired by what we're doing and it wants to do something about the mess that this country's in, and probably the worst mess it's heading for, if they want to do something about it, then they should feel that they're part of this family. And I like to think of it as a family, and we're building a community here, a community of like-minded people who actually want to get off their arse and do something about it and return New Zealand to the style it used to be, not just self-preservation, but self-sufficiency. This can-do attitude, and make it through in adverse circumstances, regardless of what the weather throws at us. And we can survive, you can survive floods, you can survive drought, and you can survive storms, but what you won't survive is the government overreach.
And no child ever again will ever need a safe space again.
Well, that's the point. Yeah, we shouldn't. I mean, we are a safe space. That's what I call a free speech corner. Whereas that there's an awful lot of people, as I said, that they readily admit they can't say what they think at many meetings, and particularly even in political meetings, they can't say it. So, Gail in a feminist group can't say what she really thinks about the way the LGBT movement has been hijacked with the T's and the Q's. So if she does, she'd be shown the door, whereas at the moment she does get the support from feminists. And so that is one of the issues that is dividing feminism to the pro-trans and the anti-trans, is the crazy people and the TERFs, as it were. And on Maori, there's so many people sitting in a karakia going, what are we doing?
Yeah.
But can't say anything about it because, like Janet Dixon, she'll lose a job.
Yeah.
So this is crazy, and that you're not gonna prosper, because what you end up doing is have a lot of subservient serfs who don't think for themselves, who have outsourced their thinking, and the government is doing their thinking for them. That will stifle innovation. If you stifle innovation, you'll stifle enterprise. Why should I bother, as it were?
And they'll even go overseas.
Well, yeah.
So, what do these groups who are doing very well in their own field, what do they need, in terms of the head of the octopus? If each one of them is a very effective arm of the octopus, what is it they need to actually become more effective, and how can we be that, for them? Is that a better way to think of it, rather than what we had before, which was the umbrella idea where everybody sort of puts, a committee person at the table, Yeah, do we think octopus?
I was thinking more hubs and spokes. We could be the hub, as it were.
What do they need? What do they need? Because if they don't see that they need any more help, or then they're not going to be interested in why do they need us? They don't.
Well,
they need members. What they need is members. What they need is a voice and a platform. And so if they can spread their message by whatever means, but at the moment they're all doing their own thing.
Yeah.
So to form a government, let's put all of these people together. Basically, they've got all the good ideas. They're just doing it all on their own. So yeah,
with no goal of going to Parliament. They're all just doing their thing where they are. Yeah.
But they all want to influence Parliament. They're all lobbying Parliament. They're all raising signatures, collecting signatures for petitions. They would all like to do referenda where possible, and they'd all like to do these submissions. So we've already shown ourselves to be quite good at doing submissions to Parliament and putting together very, very quickly. And actually, you know, as you've done yourself, your video message to Parliament on a submission, which we just carry on doing that, and eventually we actually turn up in Wellington and sit in that committee room and give our evidence there. And if we've got a whole lot of different organisations behind us, it gives us an awful lot more clout. And if they've got somebody in front of them or next to them with a group of people who are trying to get into Parliament and trying to use the democratic system, then it gives them a bit more clout. So it's all mutually beneficial. That's the idea.
But do you remember what happened last time, where they decided, you're not going to get into Parliament anyway, we're going to believe the polls, and so we're going to go for New Zealand First or ACT, who we think at least they're going to get into Parliament. And of course, they believe the story that, oh, yeah, we'll listen to you. And of course, you know, the Tanya situation has proven, no, they won't. You know, that's all just a story before election time.
Well, what will be interesting will be the outcome of the COVID inquiry, the phase 2 one, because that's all on, a lot of it's on Winston. And if people in the freedom movement, so many of them are just thinking it's going to be a whitewash. And in the freedom movement, everything ultimately rolled around the mRNA jab. That's sort of, and everything connected around that with the mandates and the vaccine passes, the lockdowns. And if they feel that they've been, just sideswiped by, Winston was just box ticking. The other point I want to make, which I thought of interest with, Lee Short said yesterday at Democracy Action, he's the head of Democracy Action, he said he's been so disappointed lately because they've been an advocacy group for quite some time, but he's been writing to David Seymour on a number of issues and Winston Peters, but has had no response back from them, and it hasn't happened before, nothing. And so it could be, just for example, Democracy Action goes, these guys are not meeting our needs anymore, and then we can be that group that says, from a principled position, saying, if you back us, this is what we will do, and we'll be completely transparent about everything we're doing, and these are our principles. And you say that it could be the Free Speech Union as well, and Hobson Pledge, and you go and you're their political voice in Parliament.
Yeah, that's the idea.
I just hope that if any of New Zealand First or ACT vote for the coalition for any digital ID, that New Zealand First doesn't turn around and say, oh, we got it wrong, please vote for us.
Yeah. I think in the freedom movement, he's got this one shot of it, and if he blows it, even with the gene technology bill and the digital ID, these are certain lines that I think there's an ethos in the freedom movement that certain lines cannot be crossed, and if it's the digital IDs, everyone's really afraid of that, basically. And even the gene technology bill, if that passes, if they see Winston's hand in play signing it all off, and this is why, another reason why I suspect Tanya Unkovich left, because she knows where it's going to go, then it's like, we can't trust anyone, like as Simon said, we've got a uni party, who can we back? Do you got comments, Simon? What do you see?
Yeah, I think that I think that you're right, and what all of this does is it just drives apathy amongst the electorate, right? And that suits the established power structures, right? Because the fewer people that are politically engaged, the fewer people that think that they can't have an influence on affairs, the better, because then the checks and balances on the establishment are diminished. So, really, when you get right down to it, none of those established parties really care about voter engagement, just as long as their percentage of those who do vote is enough to get them into Parliament. They don't care about it, right? And as soon as, of course, they are elected to Parliament, any promises that they've made beforehand are they go out the window, right? And one of the big differences when I did political science between back in the 1990s, one of the big differences that was often drawn between New Zealand and the United Kingdom in terms of the implementation of a Westminster-style democracy was that unlike, and this is just going to sound ridiculous to those of you who are younger, the big difference was that in New Zealand, manifesto promises made prior to election were not binding, whereas in Great Britain, they are. Now, can you believe, does anyone voting in the United Kingdom today believe that once upon a time, manifesto commitments were supposed to be legally binding? Of course not, right? Because that is just not what happens. Politicians will say anything to be elected, and once they're in, they will do what they want. And it's like the quote that I gave you last night from Orwell, you know, no one assumes power with the intention of relinquishing it.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
So that it's, you know, it is absolutely theatre, and we've seen that this week, right? Like, you know, everyone knows that the coalition could force Ardern and her co-conspirators to front up at that Royal Commission of Inquiry. Instead of doing that, we get all of these distractions, all of this woe is me, oh goodness gracious, aren't they terrible people for refusing to show up? When in point of fact, that is theatre. The actuality is they could make them, they could drag them kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
Right? And you know, that is a possibility that is open to them, but no one is discussing that. We're not seeing that from, you know, Mike Hosking had Christopher Luxon on his show today and didn't actually put the question to him. It's like, oh, okay, well, you know, you're criticizing Chris Hipkins, who, by the way, you were fucking dancing with on Saturday night. Why aren't you dragging this prick in front of the Royal Commission of Inquiry? And in point of fact, like, never mind about answering questions at a Royal Commission of Inquiry. These people are prima facie guilty of crimes. Where is just, never mind a Royal Commission of Inquiry, that can happen in parallel to their actual prosecutions for the crimes we already know about. You know, and of course it's because the Royal Commission of Whitewash is just simply theatre, right?
Yeah.
So this is why across the board we are seeing more and more disengagement from the political processes, and why we're seeing rising resentment. And what I think is that there is the potential for someone to come along and harness that resentment.
Yes, exactly.
And
that's the key point.
Well, it could get violent. That's the issue, and certainly if it follows the British route, it could that's going to get violent. I mean, as you said, there's plenty of pundits predicting a civil war in Britain because of what's going on, because you've got two-tier justice, because you've got people in jail for a tweet. You know, it's ridiculous, and they can see the democratic process has failed to them. It's failed, and they probably can't take another 4 years of Starmer. So you unless he goes, there will be violence. There will be violence on it.
Simon, just one thing quickly about Hipkins in particular refusing to appear before the COVID inquiry. How much do you think that will hurt his chances at next year's election? When, because there's been quite a bit of press about it, or is it by a year's time it's all blowing over?
Yeah, like look. I mean, this is the political corruption scandal. This is New Zealand's Watergate. Right? When Watergate happened back in the 1970s, that was on the daily news for months. It was the only story that was absolutely hammered until Nixon was eventually forced to resign, because it called into question the credibility of the highest levels of the United States government. Here we have exactly the same circumstance where we can see the prima facie evidence of collusion between two nominally politically opposed political factions, between National and Labour. We can see the corruption happening in real time, and yet it is going to last less than one news cycle. It is already off of the papers. We have seen Christopher Luxon address it on the Monday morning media round. We've seen some half-hearted attempts from the ACT Party to launch a petition to ask Ardern and Hipkins and Robertson to attend the Royal Commission of Inquiry. Ask them. And just by the way, that petition is a distraction. It's a deliberate distraction from the major petition, which is already being run by Voices for Freedom and
Yeah.
RCR Radio. So if they really, I mean, it's just all theatre across the board, and it will be inconsequential. In answer to your question, this will do Hipkins zero damage.
Okay.
Yeah.
And remember, Luxon at the time said he would have gone harder and faster than what Ardern did. So.
And so many people are also saying they did the best with what they knew at the time, so that everybody is so forgiving.
Yeah.
Not us.
Yeah, well, there is that. And so that, and this is it. And this brings us back to another Orwell quote that, who controls the present controls the past, and who controls the past controls the future. And the left know this very well, and they are very, very well organized at rewriting narratives. Okay. And we saw this around Albert Park. Okay. Yeah. So you had everyone on the left, from the media, from Chloe Swarbrick, from Erica Stanford, talking about a lovely, peaceful protest and all of this sort of stuff, right? And they kept absolutely hammering that and hammering that and hammering that until footage was coming out from independent photographers proving that they were absolute lies. However, you still get this narrative control. Despite all of that, you still, a couple of weeks later, had Shanoil Lal, the Indian immigrant, receiving Young New Zealander of the Year award. Hobson Point School, despite the fact that that man is a violent extremist who is a danger to women and children, was invited to the Little Gay Out to talk about his work at Albert Park. The left they do this. They control the narrative as much as possible and rewrite history. And they're going absolutely overboard to wash Jacinda Ardern's reputation. But this is really, really, it's really thorough, and it's really, really well organized. A really good example of it is there's a faux charity which is massive, Save the Children. Yeah. Save the Children is an absolutely huge charity. They get in hundreds of millions of dollars, precisely none of which actually goes to helping children. What they are is a reputation laundering service. Okay, so all of the money that people donate on the street, like, you'll see there people out collecting with little red buckets. All of that money goes to finance a gala dinner every year, and which is held at the Met in New York. So it's not the Met Gala, but it's the same venue and the same sort of price tag, right? Like, $100,000 a ticket. Only people don't have to pay. The rich and famous don't actually have to pay to attend the gala, because the people who donate into the buckets in Taumarunui are the ones who pay for these seats, right? Now, do people forget that 15 years ago, that Save the Children gave Tony Blair a Lifetime Achievement Award for all of the work that he's done for children? Now, here's the thing about Tony Blair. Tony Blair is responsible for the deaths of more children of anyone else alive except for George Bush. And that organization, being part of that left-wing kind of historical revisionism industrial complex, was enlisted to help rehabilitate his personal reputation. A similar thing, Harvard University, for example. Oh, look, Jacinda Ardern, her image has been tarnished. Quick. Let's give her an unpaid sinecure. So a woman with a bachelor's degree in communications from the Wananga of Waikato can teach at one of the world's most prestigious universities. So all of that effort you are going to see going on and on and on. And it's already started. We see it in the media, as Catherine rightly says. Oh, look, they did the best with the information that they had at their time. Jacinda Ardern saved 20,000 lives. Bullshit. That woman is responsible for the death of more Kiwis than the Spanish flu, the First World War, and the Second World War all lumped in together.
Exactly.
But that fact will never be repeated. The left will constantly, across the board, their blogosphere, their media, their political parties, the judiciary, the bureaucracy, even the National Party will expend every single effort, hammering day after day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, decade after decade, until Jacinda Ardern and every member of the Ardern regime is ready for sainthood in the public mind.
Yeah, totally. And we've got Oprah coming.
And we've got
Oprah
Oprah
is
coming. I
coming.
mean, good God. So, it is all just, it's all just theater. And you look at it and you think, this is just how malleable people are. And I don't know if you caught the interview that I did with Matt King, but I made that point to him. It's like, around COVID, like earlier, you guys were talking about, when do people finally wake up? When is it when they're being forced to sing a karakia at work? Is it when their homes are being confiscated because someone decided that they're 200 meters away from a beach and that's too much of a risk? Is it because there is some sort of reinterpretation of a treaty principle or something like that that means that they have to give up their personal property rights? Will that wake people up? And I would argue that it won't, right? Because what COVID showed us was, when you get right down to it, you can take away the fundamental civil liberties of every Kiwi, and 80% of them will go along with it. 20% of them will complain about it, and amongst that 80%, 40% of them will cheer you until the day that bitch dies.
Yeah, exactly. Wow.
Yes. Sorry.
That's a great way to end it.
Alternatively, I could just be talking my regular bollocks, but
but I really pray so. But I feel I want to ask Simon what I feel is the most important question of the night. With Hipkins and Luxon dancing together on stage, if you were the DJ, what track would have you been playing?
Oh, that's a good question. I'll think about it. I'll think about that. Yeah.
Murder on the dance floor.
Murder on the dance floor. Yeah. No, jeez. I'm going to think about that and get back to you. I'm going to come up with a perfect track for that.
Yeah, just to
go on.
Just to confirm what Simon just said about people not fighting back and will accept to be for their liberties and their rights to be taken. That's exactly what's been happening in Morocco. You could sit with people and family, friends, and they would say, "Oh, I wouldn't accept this, I wouldn't accept that." But when it comes, just people say, "Well, what can you do?" And then they say, "But well, wait, I would not accept that happening." And that really comes, they find another excuse.
Yeah.
People just retreat forever. And that's what happened in Africa, to the level of them having civil wars upon civil wars, upon faction against another faction. People just cling. In fact, the idea here is that people cling to whatever the authoritarianism let them enjoy. They just cling. They cannot say enough is enough, let's fight. No.
Okay.
Yeah, all of those reasons for becoming annoyed are only happening to a few people at once is our trouble. A little bit, the reason that we got Wellington was because a whole lot of people all decided all at once, that's enough, I've had enough. But all of these, those things that you mentioned, Simon, it's just a little collection of people all the time that and that's why we don't all together all at once, we don't all have that same impatience, bam, that's the point we need.
I am while I'm more for a peaceful counter-revolution, I'm also open when we win this, and I do believe in the end we will win it. I'm definitely open to Nuremberg 2.0. That's for sure.
Take that global. Yeah.
As you will have seen from watching my show, that my primary motivation is to rid the world of the ginger menace.
And is that because of Chris Hipkins? Is it?
Oh, it's all of them. It's all of them.
Yeah. And everyone owns a fountain pen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, well.
All right.
The other thing.
Great talk, everybody.
Yeah, just sorry, it's 2 points. Just 1 point about people relinquishing their rights constantly. It's also due to the fact that politicians and media, they really play the game correctly. Like they divide and they attack one section of the community or the nation, like just teachers, like just primary teachers, and so the others don't feel affected. So they are okay with the primary teachers being affected, and the primary teachers take to the streets. They scream, and then police comes in. That's it. And so 2 years later, they attack teachers.
Secondary teachers.
Yes, and so on. So they play that correctly.
Yeah,
just before finishing, I just would like to again reiterate the idea that we have to try and reach out to other groups and just to create the emergency. Just let's ask them, what have we done in 2 years to stop? Now Arden and her team refused to speak to the Royal Commission, right? Is this a Royal Commission, right?
Yes,
Royal Commission.
Yeah. In 2 years, what have we done to stop that, or to now? Can we deal any consequences to these guys? No, they still got away with it. And if tomorrow, another question, if tomorrow the government decides to legislate digital ID, what can we do? In 2 years, we have done nothing. Do we have any leverage? Do we have any way to fight back? Do they fear us? No. We are nothing to them.
Yeah, they don't fear individuals. I mean, one of the most powerful weapons we have is the word no. No, we're not doing it. And so it might be very difficult when they start bringing in digital IDs, but we could always refuse them and find alternatives. When they withdraw cash and try to implement CBDCs on us, we can say, no, we'll keep our cash, thanks very much. When they try to push another vaccine on us, we can say, no, not today, Satan, thank you very much, and move on. So little by little, but if it's only one person can do very little on their own. When it's 2 million, then it makes a big difference, and then they start coming down. Because the other aspect is, well, somebody suggested you don't like the council, so stop paying your rates. Now that's very difficult for one person to do, because all they'll do is come take your house. But if 1 million do it, then they're in trouble. Then they're really in trouble. Similarly with tax. Again, if one person does it, he's in jail. But if 1 million do it, it might be a bit difficult. But they'll do it one at a time. So the ruling classes have always ruled by dividing and conquering, and we've been divided for many years now. And COVID was the ultimate in division. And it's a way of separating people from the vaxxed and the unvaxxed, and the healthy and the unclean, as it were, the ones who would comply and the ones who wouldn't comply. And alongside with that, you've got the ones who stand for biological reality, and then the bigots, and then you've got the
co-governance.
The ones who want co-governance and fight for the rights of the indigenous population, and then they've got the racists. So it's at every, and it's done in the language. You can see it in the language. One of the first casualties in all of these conflicts is the language. The first casualty of war is the truth, of course. And believe me, we are in a revolution. That's why I say we're not revolutionaries, we're counter-revolutionaries. And what we're trying to do is fight against the communist plot that's been hatched over the decades. And they don't call it communism, but they call it, what do they call it? Be kind. They call it diversity, equity, and inclusion. Well, if you examine those in great detail, you'll find there's the Marxist roots behind them. And what it means is that you're giving over to the collective rather than the individual. And you're giving up individual rights for the sake of the collective. And they'll keep saying it. It's for the good. It's for the greater good of the people. And so many evils have been committed in the name of the greater good.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're not gods. That's the thing you've got to remember. They're not all powerful, and they're not all seeing and all knowing, and that they are only human. They make mistakes, and they have their limits. And people have pushed back on these things before.
Yeah, like Barry Young.
Yes.
They get hit on the head and snuck away and stuck in jail, and you know, I mean, that's so clever, isn't it?
I really basically agree with everything you're saying, Andrew. The only thing I would add to it, I feel that this time it feels very, very different because of it's so global with the WEF and the United Nations and artificial intelligence. It's all conspiring against the little person, the lay person, the common man, if you will. It feels very sinister to me.
But you know, Heart of the City got annoyed that whoever it is putting cameras up in our city, they ran out of money, so they didn't put any more cameras up. Well, Heart of the City said, "Oh, we've got a lot of crime going on in the city, so we will contribute to some cameras up." You know, it's our own people putting them up at the moment. You know, they don't see where it's going later on. And this is our problem. It's always, where is it going? You know, even though it might not be happening right this minute, what are we looking at down the barrel?
Yeah, and that's why politicians always win, because they know how to play people.
Mm.
And
it's a little bit at a time, yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned the same idea about people being egoist, or each one wants their name. It might be also because these people who control the world and have understood how the crowd works, maybe they have introduced people in this freedom movement, and these people work for them, and they create this environment of division within the freedom and united. If they have survived this long, it's for a reason.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Nice to see you all, and nice to meet some new faces. Thank you very much for the pleasure of your company, everyone.